My name is Dan Joslyn-Siemiatkoski. We probably met before during new student orientation. But I want to take time in this video to introduce myself a little bit and talk about the syllabus and how this course for History of Christianity 1 is going to go. Things are a little bit different here in our pandemic times, but I'm looking forward to learning with you and thinking about the history of Christianity with you. So let's just look at the syllabus. I'm going to be referring to the paper copy of the syllabus here. You can also follow along by downloading the syllabus at the Populi site. So I'm also pulling up the syllabus here on my screen to read along with you also. So let's just talk about what this course is about. It's meant to survey the history of Christianity from its origins to the late medieval period. In other words, we're going to be starting around the year 100 and moving to the year about 1450 or so. We are going to be focusing on a couple of key concepts here. We're going to focus on the relationship between church and society and the cultural location of development and doctrine, authority, and practices. Basically, we're asking, how did Christianity become what we know of it to be today? How was it manifested in different cultural contexts? How did it come to believe the things it believed? How did it come to have the structures and leadership in the church? And what kind of practices emerged that we can study? So some of the major themes we're going to be thinking about then, I have about 6 I like to highlight. First is Christian origins and the Jewish and Hellenistic roots. If you've done some of the MacCulloch reading already, you see this as an important theme. We can't really understand Christianity without understanding how it emerges both out of Second Temple Judaism and out of a Greco-Roman cultural context of the Eastern Mediterranean. We'll be thinking a lot about the diversity of Christian theologies, especially in the first 5 centuries or so. We'll find that many questions are up for grabs, especially the questions of who is Jesus Christ and the nature of the Trinity. And so then we'll also be really digging in on the Christological and Trinitarian controversies from the mid-3rd up through the 5th century, culminating in looking at the Council of Nicaea and the Council of Chalcedon. If you don't know what those terms mean yet, Nicaea and Chalcedon, don't worry, that's why you're here. I also like to think a lot about the global spread of Christianity. One of my key working assumptions is that Christianity has always been a global movement, or it's always contained within a lot of forms of diversity, whether it's linguistic, intellectual, cultural, ethnic, etc. We're going to be exploring some of that. We're going to be looking at Christianity not just in a Greco-Roman context. We're going to be looking at it in Nubian contexts, in Chinese contexts, in Persian contexts. And that, I think, will help us think about the way Christianity exists today in its own contexts. We'll also be talking about the relationship between church and society. That is, if we're going to think about context, we need to ask, how does church, being Christian, manifest itself in different ages and places? And then finally, we'll also be thinking about reform movements. Often, when we think about Christianity and reform, we just place that in the 16th century with the Protestant Reformation. But I want to help you see how Christianity, in some ways, is always engaged in acts of reforming. So we'll spend some time looking at that as well. Alongside of that, we want to then think about the outcomes for this course. This is in the middle of our first page of the syllabus. The course learning outcomes are the promises in a way that I make to you, and that at the end of the semester, you assess me on whether I fulfilled that promise of here's the things you're going to know by the time you're done. So I have 5 course learning outcomes. One is demonstrate an understanding of key issues, figures, and doctrines in early and medieval Christianity. Just know the key things. I'm not going to be assessing you so much on dates and places. This is not your high school history course. I want you to have a sense of the broad parameters of the Christian tradition. The second outcome is to be able to articulate this broad diversity of early and medieval Christianity and the cultural and intellectual context for the emergence of a normative Christianity. What I mean by normative there? Confessing the creeds, identifying as being part of the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. These are the things that the Episcopal Church identifies with. So being able to identify both this breadth of the Christian tradition and to be able to explain how it takes on some normative qualities over time. The third outcome is to express through collaborative work, projects, and exams, these are all your various assignments you'll have, the value of historical context and awareness as an element of theological reflection. That is, how does knowing about the Christian tradition help you be able to reflect more fully on what it means to be a Christian, what it means to be part of the church, what it means to be an educator, to be a pastor, a leader. Fourth, also to demonstrate in your various assignments the ability to reflect on and to critically assess historical documents. That is, to be able to take ownership with reading historical documents. In some ways, the history of Christianity, one course runs parallel to your first Bible courses in that you're learning similar practices of how to read these old texts, interpret them, make sense of them, and be able to work your way through them and around them. Finally, the fifth outcome is to develop towards being what I like to emphasize, a competent communicator of the Christian tradition through all of your various assigned projects. The point of this course is not to make you a church history professor, to move you towards getting a PhD in church history or anything like that. It's really learning how to competently communicate this tradition so that when you are leading communities and people ask you, why do we confess that God is 3 in 1? How is it that we've come to say this creed in church every Sunday? Why is it that bishops have the authority they do? You can own the tradition and quickly and competently give them a good answer, and also know how to send them on their way to finding more information. So those are the learning outcomes, and we'll be returning to these throughout the course, and I'll be reminding you of how you're learning about these. I just want to scroll through the assignments on the syllabus as well to have you begin thinking about what you need to be doing. First is the various readings. Readings are just a really important piece of doing this course. The focus is going to be on reading primary sources. That is texts written in their context. So you'll start off pretty soon reading one of the letters written by Ignatius of Antioch, probably sometime around 110 of the Common Era. That's a primary source. Reading primary sources is like reading the Bible insofar as you will know what it says and you won't have to rely on someone else telling you what it means. So the important thing is for you to, before listening to recorded lectures or participate in class discussions is to have read the primary sources. You'll see as you scroll through the syllabus that I put an asterisk next to the priority sources for every week. Then there's other sources that are good to have read, and I'll be discussing them, but you can feel prepared having read those starred elements. I just want to walk you through some of the texts we have. You'll go Populi for each week. You can look at the papers, the electronic syllabus here, or you can go on Populi and you'll see the various readings. Sometimes you'll have PDFs or URL links that will take you to readings. Most of the other primary sources will be coming out of this book by John Coakley and Andrea Stirk, Readings in World Christian History, Volume 1. There actually isn't yet a Volume 2, even though it's been more than 10 years. Which makes me sad. I picked this book because I think, as you can see, it's well worn. I've used it a lot for this course over the years. I like this book because it has a global perspective. It has texts outside of the Eastern Mediterranean European context. So it helps you get a much better sense of the breadth of texts, forms of Christianity that exist. So this will be designated as C and S in the syllabus and on Populi as well. We also then have this big old book by Darren MacCulloch, Christianity, the First 3,000 Years. This is your primary, or this is your secondary text reading. A secondary text is a text that interprets primary historical sources. So MacCulloch here has written a secondary text. It is a one volume, large, but one volume survey of the entirety of the history of Christianity. I selected this because it does a lot of the work I like to have done in this class. It gives you in the first 70 pages or so the context out of which Christianity emerged. It also has this global perspective. It's written in a pretty accessible way. We'll be using this text for both the fall semester and the spring semester. It's fine to bring this book to class discussions. If you're meeting in person with me, to bring it with you. I never actually will tell you to open up and read MacCulloch in so-and-so place. The point of this is this just gives you context for thinking about the primary sources. If you feel new to the study of Christianity, you feel intimidated by the primary sources, sometimes you might want to read MacCulloch first. It'll give you an orientation to things. The last book assigned is this book of charts by Robert Walton, Charts of Church History. It's handy. It gives you breakdowns of various events. We can look at, let me find a good one here. 3rd century church fathers, right? From Irenaeus down to Cyprian and Gregory Thaumaturgus. For those of you who are visual learners, these charts are a handy way of just thinking about the sources we're talking about, the controversies, the context. This will be abbreviated W in the readings. This is really supplementary. You don't ever need to bring this. This is for your reference and helps you to just organize things in your mind. Oh, I probably didn't mention it, but the abbreviation for MacCulloch, you won't be surprised, is M. I have a little thing in the syllabus also about how to read historical primary sources under the readings requirement on page 2 of the syllabus that will give you more information. Let's talk about class participation. Regular attendance in class is going to be important, obviously. There will be a small group work happening in response to question prompts I give you. I'm going to be dividing you up into small groups to do this work. There'll be more explanation of that forthcoming. So responding to the question prompts and small group work will be assessed, and I'll have a rubric of that for you. I'm also using another learning platform called VoiceThread. Some of you might have used that in the past in different educational contexts. I often use this as a place for discussing images that we're reflecting on class, or other kinds of prompts. VoiceThread is video-based. You can also type in text or record audio as well. We'll be doing an initial voice thread. We'll be doing some video introductions to each other. All right. Another major element is going to be 2 different multimedia projects that are required of you throughout this semester. They're each worth 25% of your grade. This can focus on a text, a person, a theme, an idea, what have you, that we have studied in class this semester. And you can certainly take advantage of the classroom conversations and lectures and assigned readings to develop this project. This can be some kind of slide presentation using something like Keynote or PowerPoint. It can be a video presentation. It can be some kind of use of social media or any other format. Always check in with me about what you're thinking of doing. I'll give you prompts for that. I can give you some guidance. Really, the idea is here is you can start to develop tangible things that you can use towards this outcome of becoming a competent communicator of the Christian tradition. Think about it as a way that you can develop future adult education offerings in your parish, work with youth, work with children. Really, the limits of how you want to apply this and what context it occurs in is kind of boundless. But we'll be in conversation to help you discern what that will look like. I have 2 different due dates for that. And really, October 16th and December 11th. And really, you can submit these projects at any point prior to those due dates. The rubrics and other information about this project I'll be giving to you. Finally, there's going to be a final exam worth about 30% of your grade, or exactly 30% of your grade. This will be in the style of a general ordination exam. Part of this is to take off some of the anxiety people sometimes feel about when they think about the general ordination exams. That will be happening in January of your senior year, if you're in the MDiv program and in the ordination process. These are meant to be integrative, meant to, help you develop a sense of how you're learning. And I'll walk you through that structure and format as we get towards the end of the semester. Excellent. I think that's all I have for assignments. The last thing I want to talk about is simply how this course is going to work. So, you have this on the top of page 3 of your syllabus. All students will read the assigned text for their week. Great, number 1. Then all students will watch the video lectures that I will upload to Populi or link to Populi prior to class session. These videos are actually on YouTube. They'll be clearly marked in terms of how to view them in sequence. And they'll be on the major ideas and topics for the week. What's then going to happen is students who meet in person will be divided into small groups and collaboratively respond to a response question I have assigned you for that week. That question will be in a Google document posted for that week. There's going to be one Google document for the entire class, and I'll have a question, and I'll have different groups listed. And in that area for where you find yourself in your group, you all are going to collaboratively work on an answer. So then I can see what you're doing. Then in-person students are going to come into class for a full class discussion, 75 minutes. This will be on Thursdays. And there I will facilitate a conversation in class around how folks have responded to the question. And then we'll also have a fuller time for question and answer around the video content and the readings for the week. The format then for online-only students will be very similar. You also will engage with that response question on Google Docs. And then we're going to meet via Zoom and do the same process of facilitating a conversation around the response question and then going further into other questions and responses to the material for the week. The thing I like about a single Google Doc is that that creates a sense of the whole class being together, or you can all see what you all are doing. You are allowed to read each other's responses. Don't obviously copy them, but I hope that's a way for you to stay engaged. The rest of the syllabus, I think, is fairly self-explanatory. It simply lays out the structures for each week. If you scroll to the very end, we have various academic policies that I quickly want to highlight. One is the academic honesty policy. It's really important for you to exercise integrity here at the seminary, and especially to avoid any form of plagiarism. I think this is going to be pretty hard to do with the various assignments I've given you, but always to keep in mind that personal integrity, avoiding deception and misrepresentation, of course, is essential for anyone who's going to be engaged in any kind of ministry in the church. Note that we have the Center for Writing and Creative Expression. Please avail yourself of that under Claire Colombo's office. I also just want to note the policy on disabilities. Sometimes when you get to seminary, you realize that you're having a hard time reading, hard time focusing. That might be a moment where, as an adult, you actually begin to realize you might have engaged with discovered certain learning disabilities. That's not uncommon. There's a process for both getting assessed and having accommodations made. This is all on page 9 of the syllabus. If you have other forms of disabilities that might also hinder your work, we can also set up accommodations, and we would follow the same process here. I just also want to note the intellectual property policy. All the material I'm providing you, I've created. It's mine. You can certainly use it, engage with it, save it, but don't disseminate it for the use of others without talking with me first. I understand the YouTube videos are a little bit different, but the lecture notes in particular, certainly use for your own edification, but don't then go back and distribute them to others outside of the seminary context without checking in with me first. And finally, just the conversation covenant. The conversation covenant we discussed at NSO, really ensuring that we are engaging with each other with charity, with seeking to fully hear one another, and with stopping to recognize the humanity of each other. When we talk about who we are as Christians, that can get to some of our own sense of identity, self-worth. And when we sometimes discover that others have different views, that can be difficult. So we're going to be working on charitably engaging with one another. I have to say, I'm really excited to be engaged in all this work with you, and I hope to learn with you. If you have questions, please feel free to email me and contact me. All right, thanks.